All right, so this next video is going to talk about the control of cell division. So some of the factors that have to do with ensuring that cells can divide or preventing them from dividing. As mentioned earlier, there were a few check marks that cells need to go through throughout the G1, S, and G2 phases. And therefore, those are really important to make sure that a cell divides correctly. So with that said, cell division capacities vary greatly among cell types. So the first thing to keep in mind is it really depends on the cell. So skin and blood cells are going to divide very, very often, whereas things like your liver cells, they divide a few times and then just stop. There are studies showing that it's not permanent necessarily in all organs, but still, it really does depend on the cell we're talking about. So some cells will go into G0 and stay there. Again, G0 being the pause button. Chromosome tips, also known as the telomeres, you may have heard those. Those are the ends of each chromosome. They shorten with each mitotic division, and therefore is considered a mitotic clock. So therefore, after every division, your DNA gets a little bit shorter, and some consider that a process of aging. There are a lot of studies coming out now that show that as a possible sign of that, but there are a lot more studies that are showing that there are more complex and even less complex reasons for aging. But that is also very interesting. Cells divide to provide a more favorable surface area to volume ratio. So, in other words, think of it like I like this example. Think of it like a Reese's peanut butter cup. If you cannot eat these, I'm sorry for you. But if you think about a Reese's peanut butter cup, there are different sizes, right? You can get the regular, you can get the minis, or you can get those ridiculously large, massive peanut butter cup things, right? They have like the Reese's eggs and so forth. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It's pretty crazy. So ask yourself a question. Do they all taste exactly the same? The answer is if you've had them all. Yes and no. Like, it's still chocolate and peanut butter, but the ratios of chocolate and peanut butter are insanely different. So when you eat the chocolate minis, or Reese's minis, you're getting a lot more chocolate in it, right? Because it has a lower surface to volume ratio, right? They're very small, right? So the volume, the peanut butter, is very small too. But the chocolate on the outside is pretty high. If you eat one of those really, really big ones, there's tons of peanut butter on the inside and only a little bit of chocolate on the outside relative to the inside. So what you see is the larger things get, the volume multiplies at 4 times the size of the surface area. With that said, that is not good for a cell. All right. If your job is to absorb things, you want to be as small as possible because just like the Reese's Mini, you got more chocolate relative to your peanut butter, right? That's good for a cell. If you have a ton of peanut butter, that's not as good unless you're into that. But in this case, you're not because you're not. We're talking about cells. So that said, that is really important. So cells divide quickly so that they don't get too big. If they get too big, they don't work as well. Growth factors in hormones, they're going to stimulate cell division. So depending on, it's a lot of variability. So depending on certain growth hormones, different hormones, growth factors, different hormones, you may see an increase in mitotic division, a decrease in mitotic division. It depends. There's a lot of variability there. Contact inhibition. So hopefully this works. So in other words, if two cells are touching one another, they are in contact, and therefore they will inhibit one another from dividing. What that means is they prevent them from dividing. That's good. You don't want to keep dividing nonstop forever. If you divide forever, that's called cancer. You create a tumor. Don't want that. And there it is. Tumors are the consequence of the loss of control of a cell cycle. So these are some of the things that help keep cell division in check. All right. And if it goes out of check, out of balance, you can see tumors start to form. And that is going to be the next slideshow.